Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Farmer Greg here, and welcome to the 613th episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where every day we work together to educate and inspire you to become part of your food revolution. Stay tuned for the most amazing deal on bulk seeds and seed-saving education you have ever seen. A few years ago, our team created an event called the Great American Seed Up, where we pack hundreds of people into a room over a few days to scoop amazing open-pollinated and heirloom seeds for their gardens and collections. We came up with the Scoop Your Own model because the majority of the cost of seeds is actually in the packaging and distribution. So by eliminating these costs, people can buy seeds at bulk pricing. Well, as you can imagine, packing hundreds of people into a room is not feasible these days, so we had to get creative. We came up with the Seed Up in a Box. And what's amazing about it is that now you can get these bulk seeds wherever you are in the world. We've chosen seeds that are popular, non-GMO, open-pollinated, and easy to grow. They're bundled 10 jumbo packs per variety, so you can share them with your community, family, church, or school. Your job is to split them into individual packages. Our job is to make them as inexpensive as possible, and right now, they're averaging about 60 cents per individual jumbo portion. With all the uncertainty in the world, a lot of people are thinking about how we can make our future more food secure. Seed Up in a Box is a great way to do this because each bundle has enough seeds and education so that you may never have to purchase seeds again. This is an amazing deal, and I am so excited for the opportunity to take the Great American Seed Up all around the world via our Seed Up in a Box. Learn more about Seed Up in a Box and get your own bundle by going to greatamericanseedup.org. That's greatamericanseedup.org. Today is Farmer Friday, a quick tidbit for growing your garden. Each episode will feature less than 10 minutes or so of essential content for growing your garden, and some episodes we will answer your questions. If you have one, send it to questions@urbanfarm.org. Today we're talking with Kristina Hunter with the Live Well Green podcast about permaculture's benefits in connecting us with nature. Enjoy. Welcome back, Kristina.
Thanks so much, Greg. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh my gosh, and it's always a delight to connect with you. Thank you for being here. So I'm a longtime advocate of permaculture, which I like to call the art and science of working with nature. And you want to share a bit today about how permaculture connects us with nature. So go.
You know what? I love that you're so into permaculture because there are so many benefits to it, not just for the soil and for the ecosystems that we're trying to restore,
Mm-hmm.
but also for us, for our bodies. And I think that's sometimes lost in the discussion around these things that we actually do benefit from spending time with and connecting with nature. And it's so interesting because I think a lot of us have felt that before, just intuitively, I need to feel better and I'm going to go work in my garden or something like that. But it turns out the science is catching up and
Right?
brain science has been so interested in this stuff. So there's a concept called forest bathing that came out of Japan. And I'm not sure if you've heard of that before,
It's
Greg.
called what?
Forest bathing.
Oh, I haven't. That sounds like
No.
interesting, though.
It is. It is. Well, it doesn't actually involve any bath, but it involves immersing ourselves in the forest. And the Japanese have been studying this and doing it for decades and even hundreds of years. But they've been studying it and the science behind it for many decades already now. And it
Interesting.
turns out that when we immerse ourselves in nature, the chemicals that we're exposed to do really good things for us. And it shows
Right?
that it actually can measurably reduce our anxiety and reduce stress. And it decreases our blood pressure and our heart rate comes down. And this improves our ability to manage pain. And it actually improves our ability to manage different mood disorders and so on. And so the science is really exciting and interesting. There's one certain bacterium that's found in the soil called Mycobacterium vaccae, and it turns
Wow.
out it's been thought of as a natural antidepressant. It helps
I've
our
heard
bodies.
that before. Yeah.
Right? Yes. It stimulates serotonin production in our body. And that's the happy chemical in our brains, right? It helps us feel less stressed and
Mm-hmm.
happier. And it's also involved in digestive enzyme release and blood vessel constriction and mood regulation. So, the lack of serotonin we know is linked to a variety of physical and mental health issues, including depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, and
Mm-hmm.
bipolar disorder, and irritable bowel syndrome, and so on. So, I'm not saying that we can heal all of that here, but we definitely know that there are some benefits, and they're real and they're measurable from spending time in nature.
This is
Yeah,
a thing. I just
it's a
I
thing.
just typed in
Thing.
forest bathing
Yeah.
into the search engine. It says forest bathing, a retreat to nature can boost your immunity and mood. This is an NPR article from a couple of years ago, and the author says when my editors asked me to report on forest bathing, I packed a swimsuit, assuming it must be getting wet.
Right.
She said it turns out my interpretation was too literal, and she met certified forest therapy guide Melanie
Yeah.
Chaucus Bradley and several other women who'd come along for an adventure.
Yeah. Right.
Wow. I'm getting
Uh-huh.
chills as we share this. Well, it makes
It's
perfect sense to
exciting.
connect with nature.
Right? It's really exciting. The science is catching up, I think, to what we know instinctively, what feels right to us.
Hmm.
And there's been like really exciting research. I do some work in the green building space, and there's a lot of advocacy for just having a view of nature, from indoors. It turns out there's measurable benefits from that, from just seeing green space. You can have measurable increased productivity. Kids do better on their school tests, and we have reduced anxiety, and you can even heal faster from a surgery.
Wow.
So it's really exciting. So I love permaculture as a way to connect us with nature. It gets us outdoors, and it gets us our hands in the dirt, in the soil,
Hmm.
contacting those positive microbes. I mean, they're not all positive, trust me. You can still get an infection, but there are good ones in the soil as well. And then it also helps us to just pay attention to nature. And I think that's a big part of permaculture, right? It's about
Observation.
being mindful, right? Yes, and observing and really immersing yourself in the cycles and the rhythms and being present there with the location that you're wanting to grow in. And that's really important because it gets us into the moment and it helps us to be mindful and present with nature and then with ourselves. And it also brings us back to remembering that we're part of nature. I think sometimes, in my field where we talk about the environment, it's often a box that we check off, It's
Right.
something outside of our lives, right? It's like, oh, I'll do this and I'll recycle and okay, I'll have a garden and so on. But there's more to it than that. We're physically, biologically connected. So it shouldn't be that much of a surprise when the science bears that out that we do
Right.
well in nature when we spend time in nature and it's actually a really positive thing for us on so many levels.
One of the things that I do, so I'm sitting here in my office and my garden is literally 20 feet in any direction if I get up and out
Lovely.
of my office. And often what I will do during the day is I just stand up and I go out and stretch in the yard, maybe do a little bit of standing yoga, but I
Nice.
walk through the yard in my bare feet.
Really?
Yeah. And there's another concept out there. You may or may not have heard of it. It's called earthing.
No, I have never
It's
heard of that.
yeah, it's actually connecting our bodies with the earth. And
Nice.
so from that perspective, I've known for years about going out in my yard, I have grass
Yeah.
and walking in the grass in my bare feet.
And it feels good.
Yeah.
And it makes you more present, right?
Yeah.
We're just in the place more when we're connected. And then we get that feeling of connection. And it reminds us we are actually biologically connected to the earth.
Hmm.
And I think that's so important for us because we think of ourselves as so separate, so much above it all, right? The
Right.
reality is we're not at all. We when we think about our food, it's directly sustaining life and it comes from the earth.
Hmm.
And all of those molecules that we require, just to live, to exist, they come from nature and they're part of the natural cycles. When we think about nitrogen and we think about how we need that, it's in our DNA, right? We need nitrogen.
Yeah.
And yet we can't access the nitrogen that's in the atmosphere. It's not biologically available to us. We need those soil microbes to process it so it goes into the food system, and then we can digest it and integrate it into our bodies. So we're really directly connected to the natural world in physical, biological, but also spiritual ways. And so I think that's a lovely thing to think about, that the permaculture and gardening activities and urban farming is such an important act for ourselves in connecting us with nature. And so I was hoping that your listeners would think about it not just as a chore or something I'm doing that's good for the environment or good for my body, but it really is the foundation of life. And that's what we're doing here. We shouldn't feel bad about spending time in the garden, because it is a necessity for us to be in nature, and we really thrive when we are spending time in nature. So feel free to make it part of your daily routine, and a part that you never allow to slip, even if you
Right.
have other demands and so on, and indoor office work, and just making sure to have it as part of your everyday and value the importance of what it brings to us all.
Yeah. Well, I noticed for myself as I'm aging, I
Mm,
turned 60 years old this year, and as I'm aging,
congratulations.
I'm being called more outside.
Interesting.
I've been gardening I've been gardening at this property for 32 years. I've been gardening since the 70s.
Mm,
And over the course of the past 20 years, it's become more of my profession is teaching
mm.
about it. And I'm feeling called to get back out in the garden more.
Yes, and that is, a lot of our jobs, and mine too. I spend a lot of time at the desk, but I make sure to also be present when I'm outdoors and be mindful. And I enjoyed so much. On my run last night, I saw 4 deer
Oh, no
on two
way.
different occasions. Yeah, on
Wow.
my run in the city here. So it was a really special moment that slowed me down and took my eyes off of the pavement and got me into the moment. And I think that's what the gardening activities can do too, to remind us to be in the moment, to be present with nature, and how really vital it is for us as human beings, beings of this earth.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Greg. It's been a delight.
So tell everybody where they can find you and a little bit about your podcast.
Thanks so much. Yes, I have a podcast. It's called Live Well Green. And it's all about an evidence based approach to sustainable well being. It's the intersection of where personal wellness meets environmental and community sustainability and green living. So that's what we talk about. And I hope you join me there. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on my website, which is ChristinaHunterFlourishing.com. And that's Christina with a K.
Awesome. And if you see pictures of her, you're going to see this great smile. You're always, we've had, this is our third interview together. And, when I get to see you, you're always smiling big. So love that
Yes,
about
I'm,
you.
I'm loving this conversation with you
Right?
always, Greg. It's wonderful. It's a delight.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.